Greetings, everyone. Very good evening to all of you. Just give me about 2 minutes. I'm just getting my webcam fixed out here, and we should begin with the session. Please put up a thumbs up sign if you can hear me in the chat box. All right, guys, very good evening. Nice to see 175 of you here today. Total delegation count is way above that, maybe about 5, 7 times more. But nonetheless, it's really good to see all of you. Hi, hi, hi. For those of you who don't know me, it's Prashant once again out here, um, part of the Heartsman team and the Lalaji Memorial Omega International School. I think this session kickstarts our conference this year, and I'm super happy and super excited that all of you have decided to be part of this conference at large. But before I begin, I thought maybe I could show you my new hairstyle as well. I just got it done recently, made for all of you, of course, and yeah, I hope you can hear and see me very clearly right now. So today, please forgive me for my jokes, as some of you must be knowing. But today, as we begin our official session on the rules of procedure for Hearts MUN 2024, I want you to open a document called the Hearts MUN Rules of Procedure. You would have received it from your school, or you would have received it over email if you are registered from the Google form. So please get that open up in front of you so that I can explain it to you. It's really simple. You don't need to mug up anything. You don't need to buy heart anything in this entire thing. What you need to essentially do is you need to understand what I'm going to be explaining to you so that on the days of the conference, when we meet on Saturday and Sunday for the committee sessions, you all can engage, interact, and essentially talk to each other in the committee through your discussions and deliberations. You don't need to mug up the procedure. Have a copy of it with you at the conference as well. I don't think I can share it out here. Uh, I think there is a share screen option. So, yes, I will share my screen with all of you because even I get bored looking at myself in a camera all the time, no doubt. But nonetheless, to begin with today's session, just going to start by sharing my screen. The Hartsman Rules of Procedure. Is my screen visible to all of you? Thumbs up in the chat box if you can see my screen. Fantastic. Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. So, beginning with the rules of procedure, we start with point number one. All right. It's called delegate representation. Delegate representation essentially means your allocation, your allotment, and your role as part of the Hearts MUN conference. So as you can read in your delegate representation point, all delegates, each one of us from the different schools who are participating, will represent any one country, or in the case of fictional or non-UN based committees, a portfolio such as a Marvel superhero, and will have one vote on all voting matters as mentioned in the procedure. This basically means that all of us, irrespective of which country, which thing we're representing, which portfolio we're representing, we're all on a level playing field. We're all on the same level, and we are going to be having each one vote for all the different voting matters that we're going to be deliberating in our conference and in our committee sessions. This is what your point number one, delegate representation, essentially means. Next up, we have something called communication languages, right? So, language should never be a barrier, especially when we're brainstorming, discussing, innovating, and trying to find solutions to the world problems that we're faced with today. So, the Hearts MUN rules of procedure will not only recognize English as its official language, but will also recognize Tamil as an official language. So, in case some of you are more comfortable communicating, emphasizing, or putting forth your points in your own mother tongue, you can feel free to do so. That my recommendation is try to stick to English as far as possible. But yes, we have our chairpersons and organizing council members who will translate. For you in the conference as you go about your discussions, debates, and deliberations. So both English and Tamil will be recognized as the official communication languages of Hearts MUN 2024. Point number three, electronic devices. All right, electronic devices are permitted. All right, please bring your electronic devices to the conference. I know generally when we're in school and when we're studying in school and we have a different, academics going on, we're banned and, probably punished for carrying our phones, which we hide generally and bring. I know. But in the MUN conference, we don't want you to be a rot learner. We don't want you to mug up something and come here and just blankly say it out. But what we want you to do is we want you to refer to the study guides, and we want you to do your own research, which you can log in to your electronic devices such as your mobile phones, pads, or laptops. Make a Microsoft Word or Google Doc document and note down the different points that you wish to discuss based on the agenda and based on the country that you're representing. This is why we want you to use the electronic devices. I know many of you all are there on Instagram. You must follow Hearts MUN underscore LMOIS, the official Heartsman page. There's a lot of fun stuff and a lot of information of the conference coming up on the social media handle as well. So please follow that page. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. And essentially bring your electronic device. Circling back to that, bring your electronic devices with you. Don't use it only for, Facebook and Reels and Instagram like that. Use it productively, use it positively, and it will be so beneficial to you while you're talking in committee. Another reason why you should also use your electronic devices is because in discussion, there are so many different people, right, who are going to be discussing and debating in the conference, right? And there may be certain points that another delegate of another country has mentioned in the committee, and you have no clue what that encompasses, what that covers, nothing like that, right? So that's where your electronic devices come very handy for you. So I can really quickly take out my phone and I can kind of Google something that maybe Kavya or maybe Deepthi or maybe Purni or maybe Mr. Bala has shared, so that I can understand what another delegate has told me and accordingly take my course of action of discussing and debating on that particular subtopic or topic that is being discussed at that juncture in time. So bring your electronic devices. There is Wi-Fi. We have specially called for routers for all of you as well. The Wi-Fi, it can only be used primarily for the research. So don't go around streaming YouTube videos and Instagram reels. Use it for the research purposes only. Else we will have to firewall it. In case you are caught doing something wrong on your electronic devices, you will be banned from using the electronic devices. So please keep this one thing in mind. Moving to point number 4, decorum. Very, very important point. You see, in heated discussions and debates, in heated discussions and debates, people tend to lose their cool really easily. It's a very common thing, especially when we're young, especially when we're teenagers, right? I mean, we really want to get a point across, and sometimes, may not intentionally, but sometimes you might engage in unparliamentary language, unparliamentary behavior. All right. So you must remember, as much as you may be a student right now, sitting in this session, on the days of the conference, you are role playing a leader of a country, and you need to carry yourself as a leader of a country and not as a 15-year-old teenager fighting and trying to get your points across in an unparliamentary fashion. There are many tools of debates for heated discussions and debates, and it's a lot of fun. And I'm going to explain to you through the three sessions as well. But one thing that you must always remember is that we are not only representing different countries, we are representing ourselves in the conference as well. There are going to be almost 1,000 people at this conference, okay? And they're all your age. We want you to engage, we want you to make friends, we want you to network, we want you to have healthy discussions and debates. But most importantly, to achieve that goal, you must learn to be on your best behavior at all times as well. There have been many cases where people have gone above and beyond. Those people have been temporarily suspended and sometimes even permanently suspended from the conference. So please, I would request you to be on a cordial behavior, in a parliamentary behavior, be nice to each other, irrespective of your difference of opinions, and have healthy discussions and debates. No two people are the same. You're bound to get into heated arguments. But you must remember at all times that I am sitting in a Model UN conference. I am sitting in a United Nations simulation. It's a very prestigious thing. It is a very important thing. It is giving you and everybody else an insight into how our world's future is going to be, which is actually quite literally in your hands. So if you are going to behave in an unparliamentary manner and break healthy discussions, debates, and difference in opinions, then it's not going to end up being a healthy conference. So remember, behavior is very, very important, all right? And you must maintain that at all times. Going forward to the next point called informal voting, point number 5, all right? Informal voting. Now you see in the actual United Nations and in every MUN conference, any one person cannot decide the course of committee, cannot decide what's going to happen in committee. Everybody needs to work together and everybody needs to be having that one vote. Remember, each one of us are representing one country in one committee. We have one vote for all voting matters. One type of vote is called informal voting. It is used at all junctures in time. If I want to do something in the conference, okay, I cannot just say that, okay, I want to do this. It doesn't work that way, right? We need to take into understanding what the rest of the delegates from the different schools in your committee want to do as well. That is what is informal voting, where we have a simple majority. Now, in the conference, you will be having something called a placard. Okay, a placard is like an A4 size paper like that, which folds and is going to be there on your table. It will have your country or portfolio's name written on that placard. You are recognized. You are going to be recognized by that country's name. And there is going to be something called informal voting that's going to be having very regularly. In informal voting, your chairperson, who I will also explain what a chairperson is, will ask you that, hey, Sadhana, hey, Rishi, hey, delegate of so and so country, we would, so and so delegate would like to do X particular thing in the committee. All those in favor of doing X particular thing, please raise your placards. So all those people who feel that, hey, you know what, that the discussion proposed by Anusya or the discussion proposed by Shireen is something that is beneficial and something that should be discussed in the committee, you should vote for it. If you feel that, hey, Prashant has raised up a motion or raised up something to do in the committee which makes no sense, then at that junction time, you do not vote for it. All right, the chairperson will ask you. It's based on simple majority, which essentially means if there are 30 people in your committee and 16 people vote for X particular thing in point number 5, informal voting, then that thing will pass. It will go forward and that discussion will be actioned in committee. However, if majority delegates say no, I don't want to discuss this, then that discussion will be tabled, will be put aside, and we will not have that discussion. Everything that we do in the committee sessions, in our discussions, in our deliberations, everything goes through informal voting, which makes me re-emphasize to you point number one, which essentially means that each one of you have an equal say and an equal vote in this conference in your committee. So you can choose what you think is best. Your committee has together as consensus. Objective of MUN is not only to fight and debate, but actually to find consensus and help the universe grow as one. This is the reason why informal voting is there in place for this conference. All things that happen will go through informal voting, and this point will become more clear to you as we progress through our training sessions over the course of the next 3 days. Moving forward to the next point, formal voting is something that I'm going to pause for now, and I'm going to come back when we discuss something called a resolution. So as of now, we have completed point number 1 to 5. Moving to the rules pertaining to the executive board. First, let me explain to you what an executive board is. In school, you have a class teacher, right? That class teacher is the one who moderates, helps, guides, teaches a committee. Much like how you have a class teacher in school, in an MUN conference, you have a group of people called the executive board. Each committee has two executive board members. They are both co-chairpersons. Who are these executive board members? Why are they here? And what are their roles? First and foremost, the executive board members are experienced MUNers. How maybe some of you are coming for the first time, some of you for the second time for an MUN conference. These executive board members have done multiple conferences before. They have been a delegate, and after gaining that experience as a delegate, they have now grown to become a chairperson in conferences like Hearts MUN. They are a lot like your class teachers. Their job is not to sit and spoon feed you. Their job is to guide, moderate, and yes, even help your committee and your healthy discussions in the conference. I'm happy to inform you that the Hearts MUN Executive Board team comprises of 46 amazing chairpersons from the best of MUNers from across Chennai, and it's one of the largest executive board members to ever be there in an MUN conference in our city. So they're really good people. They are very intellectual, and they are there to guide and help you through your discussions and debates. Like a class teacher, the decision of the executive board will always be upheld. They are the decision makers for the committee. On all discussion and debate matters, chairperson's opinion, is going to be final and binding. Also, in case there is any inappropriate behavior by any delegates, the chairperson also has a right to take action against them, referring to point decorum once again. And another thing that the chairperson can do is, suppose I as a delegate have made certain statements in the conference in my committee. It may be an accusation to another country, it may be an accusation that's come to me from another country. The chairperson has a right to ask me for a justification as well, because we cannot just pick up and say anything that we want, right? I mean, we need to talk to each other, we need to back it up with proof, with evidence, with information which is credible. All right, so the chairperson has a right to ask you for justifications based on what you said. So to summarize, what an executive board members are, the young people like you and like me as well, because I still like to feel young. So these executive board members, experienced MUNers over the years, have a lot of experience. They're here to help you, they're here to guide you, they're here to moderate you, and they're here to ensure that the movement and direction of committee moves in the right direction. You are having healthy discussions, deliberations, trying to find creative solutions, and making this entire world problem into a solution through your innovativeness and creativity. Through the while, the executive board members will also give you points. They are the ones who are going to judge you, seeing how you behave in committee, how you interact with everyone, how you engage with everyone, what your motives are, what kind of solutions you bring to the table, what is your contribution to the committee. All of these different yardsticks is what the executive board members are going to observe. They're not going to tell you. They are friends. They're going to guide you. They're going to help you. But they're also going to be giving you points and going to be analyzing your entire experience and contributions as a delegate of the country that you're representing during the entire committee sessions at large. This is what point number 7 executive board essentially means. Sorry. Next up, we have something called appeal. All right. So, what is this meaning of appeal? Appeal is basically when you have a concern. Okay. Suppose, for example, you are not happy with committee proceedings, saying that, you know what, this chairperson is not recognizing me, or I'm not getting chance to speak, or I need to do something in the committee. Whatever difficulty you're facing in committee, any kind of issue that you're facing in committee, what you need to do is you need to raise your placard. Okay, you need to raise your placard. What you can read in italics, permission to appeal to the chair, is what statement you are going to make. The chairperson will recognize you. You wait for the chairperson to get recognize you, then you can get up from where you're seated, go to the chairperson, share your concern about why you're appealing, what the issue is, and the chairperson, if they think that okay, this is something valid, it needs to be looked into, they will help you get that entire grievance of yours solved in the conference. So, coming to what I was trying to tell you, whatever difficulty that you're facing in committee, your chairperson are your friends. They're there to guide you, they're there to help you, they're there to mentor you. Whenever you're facing a difficulty, do not hesitate to raise your placard and say permission to appeal to the chair. Approach your chairperson after they acknowledge you and share your concerns with your respective chairperson as well. This is what point number 8 appeal essentially means. Next up, we have something called censure. Censure essentially like how the chairperson has certain powers, asking justifications, maintaining decorum, things like that. Even you, as a country's leader, also have certain powers as well. And one of these powers is something which is called censure. Censure essentially means to remove someone from your committee. All right. How do you do this? Again, everything you want to do, you need to raise your placard. You need to raise your placard, and then you can say, once you get recognized, that yes, Delegate of Prashant, what is your point or motion? So I will say motion to censure the delegate or even the executive board member of so and so committee. Why this is done? Suppose there is a delegate who is not maintaining decorum, who is not letting committee proceed, who is creating problems in the committee, who is not having healthy discussions, who is creating issues. It is applicable even to the chairperson. If you feel that your chairperson is not appropriate, is not guiding the committee in the right way, is not recognizing the right delegates, is being biased, what you as a committee, not you individually, but you as a committee have the power to do is you can open a motion to censure and remove that delegate, or even for that matter, the chairperson of that committee. Remember two things. One is you need to have a valid reason, okay, backed up by solid evidence. And two, you need the final approval from our school faculty and secretary general at the conference as well. So these two are the prerequisites to censure another delegate. The delegate can be censured for a one committee session. It can even be censured for a conference at large, depending on how that delegate is causing problems in the committee. So this is what you need to do during the conference in terms of censure as well. So this is a power that is given to you being a delegate in the conference. Next up, we have something called the Secretary General. Point number 10, we have something which is called the Secretary General. What is a Secretary General? Secretary, like how you have executive board members who are like class teachers, like that, Secretary General is a lot like your school principal. The apex authority and decision-making body of the conference is known as a Secretary General, as it is in the actual United Nations as well. Does anyone know who the Secretary General of the United Nations as of today is and from which country he's from? Let me know in the chat box. Anyone? Antonio from Portugal. Tarun, you're absolutely right. Yes. Antonio Guterres. The Antonio guy, says Sun. Yes. Whenever I think of Antonio, I think of Antonio Banderas for some reason. But nonetheless, point being is like that in our conference, we also have a Secretary General who has shared powers with our principal, the Secretary General of our conference. Her name is Ms. Sweta Gayatri Iyer, and also who shares the same position with her is our school principal, Miss Divya, as well. So these two people are the main and final decision making body. They have sweeping powers, which basically means in the hierarchy of things, they are the final decision makers on all matters regarding the conference and have sweeping powers as well. So this is what your structure of your conference are. You have your delegates, which is all of you. Each committee has your two executive board members. Above the executive board members come the secretary general and our school principal. Remember, it's not about hierarchy, it's not about designations, it's not about positions. It's all about us working together to ensure we find beautiful solutions to the problems our world is plagued with today with the help of the structure of Hart's MUN rules of procedure that has been created for all of you. So this is what your point secretary general essentially means. Next up, we go to something called debate rules. This is where you start getting involved in the discussions and deliberations of the conference. All right. So first up, we have something which is called attendance. Attendance is not like a school. Okay. How you essentially come to class, and maybe your teacher will do like a roll call, saying roll number 5, Nisha, roll number 6, Shweta, roll number 10, Bala, and so on and so forth. Similarly, even in the actual United Nations and even in the model United Nations, there is something called attendance, which is essentially taken to begin discussions, debates, and deliberations, much like how we begin our day in school in our first lecture when our class teachers come. The total minimum number of members required in the committee to proceed with discussion is 1/4 of the total committee. But the only difference apart from your school attendance and MUN attendance is what is, rather than you are being called out by roll numbers in school or your names in school, in the MUN conference, you will be called out by the country that you are representing. So suppose I am the delegate of India, I will raise my placard and I will say delegate of India present and voting. Not just present ma'am, present ma'am, but present and voting. This essentially means that I, as a delegate of India, am present in committee and I am going to be exercising my voting powers on all voting matters in this conference. So it will go alphabetically right from Australia to Zimbabwe and cover all the countries that are essentially present in your committee. Once we complete with the attendance is when the committee officially begins. The next point in the agenda is something called setting an agenda. You see, there will be one very common statement that your chairpersons and executive board members will continuously repeat in the conference. This statement is something which is called any points or motions on the floor. In simple words, in our lingo, what it means is what would you as a committee like to do next? Any points and motions on the floor means what would you as a committee, as a delegates of the committee like to do to progress with the discussions and deliberations. One such motion, the first motion we need to set is to set the agenda, right? I mean, we've all given attendance. Now what do we do? First thing that we do is any one of us from the committee, we can raise a placard. We say what is written here in italics, which is called motion to set the agenda. Mention the agenda of your committee. Like everything else, and remember, if you remember point number 5, informal voting, informal vote will take place. In the informal vote, the chairperson will ask all those delegates looking to set this as the agenda for our discussions, please raise your placards. At that point of time, again, you will raise your placard and you will vote for that because that is the agenda for the conference. And once majority votes means more than 50%, that agenda will be on the floor and your discussions, debates, and deliberations will officially begin. So how do you start the committee? First, you give attendance like in school, and then like how teacher says, students, today we're going to learn geography chapter 3, rivers of India, right? So like that, here your class teacher is not going to tell you to do it. Here your chairperson is not going to tell you to do it. You are the leader of the country. This is your committee. You are going to raise your placard and you are going to say motion to set the agenda on development of rural communities or whatever your agenda essentially is. It will be followed by an informal vote, once again simple majority, so more than 50% naturally will agree, and then the agenda will be set to the floor. Reason why this sounds so simple to you right now is because this is every committee has just one agendas. Sometimes, and maybe in the future, there are going to be committees which will have two or even three agendas for that matter. As we progress with the development of the Hearts MUN platform in Chennai, there will be agendas with committees with multiple agendas. In this case, you can choose which agenda you would like to discuss first in the committee and then progress on to the next one. Again, setting the agenda is to say, okay, let's open chapter 3, Rivers of India, and let's begin our discussions. Now that all of us are on the same page of having that discussion on the agenda that we've been allocated, how do we proceed? How do we initiate discussions? There is one thing which is called the General Speakers List, very popularly abbreviated as the GSL. What is this General Speakers List? How is it beneficial? What do I need to do? The general speakers list is always open unless there is another motion or point on the floor. What is the robotic statement that the chairperson will always tell you? Any points or motions on the floor. If there are no points or motions on the floor, the general speakers list will be continuously running at all times. So what is this GSL? What do I as a delegate of India need to do about the GSL? GSL essentially means it's like an introductory speech. It's like an introductory stance, which is for a maximum of 90 seconds. What we want you to do in a general speakers list address or speech for that matter is we want you to explain your country's stance, your country's position on that topic. This essentially means this essentially means that we want you to showcase to the rest of the committee. It'll start with Australia, move all the way to Zimbabwe, Australia, Bahrain, Canada, Denmark, Egypt, France, Germany, Israel, so on and so forth. Everybody will be part of GSL. Everybody will have a different stance. There will be some people who are for the topic, there will be some people who are against the topic, and there will also be some people who are neutral in a topic as well. The objective of the general speakers list, objective of the general speakers list is to essentially showcase what your position is in the committee. Who are my friends? Who are the people who support my ideology? Who are the people who support my position on a particular agenda? Am I for the topic? Am I against the topic? For example, cryptocurrency. There are different countries who have different stances on cryptocurrency, right? Putting it in a very brief manner. So when it comes to such things, I, as a country like India, I don't recognize cryptocurrency yet. But however, the USA and Elon Musk, they always recognize cryptocurrency. So I know that in this committee, I am going to showcase that, hey, you know what? India does not recognize cryptocurrency. It is not a legal tender in our country. And because it's a decentralized, you could say, intangible asset which has no intrinsic value, that is the reason why whatever you'd like to contribute based on your research and analysis. Objective of the GSL is very simple. We want you to take 90 seconds to just showcase me as Prashant and whichever country I'm representing. Am I for the topic? Am I against the topic? Or am I neutral towards the topic? These are the three things that need to be analyzed in the conference. This will show you who your friends are in your committee. Your best friend from school who may be in the same committee as you, it's very possible because of the country they're representing, they are your worst enemy at the same time. Objective is what your country stance is, what you think. Israel Palestine crisis, for example. What do you think would be the US stand? What do you think would be Iran's stand? Two opposite things altogether. How do you get to know this? You can't research about all 30, 40 countries, 50 countries at one time. So, in this general speakers list, it is your responsibility as a delegate of your country to show what your position is on that agenda and how you are involved with that topic, with that agenda, whether you are for, against, or neutral towards the agenda or topic that is at hand in your committee. 90 seconds, it happens alphabetically from A to Z. Everybody gets a chance to speak in this committee, and essentially what also happens, just a moment, that I'm in the online session. Sorry about that. My doggo actually really wanted to meet me. I rescued him, just before the pandemic. He's really sweet. Anyhow, as I was trying to tell you, is that I will go and give him some treats after this for sure. But point being is that the general speakers this, in a nutshell, is a short, informative address by you showcasing whether you are for, against, or neutral towards a topic. All right. This will help you recognize who your friends and who your enemies are and who are the neutral people that we need to convince in this conference. This is what the general speakers list essentially means as such. It is always open unless there is another point or motion on the floor, which I will explain further the different points and motions as we progress through our different training sessions. Now, here comes the interesting part, right? Now, suppose you don't use these 90 seconds. Suppose you don't use these 90 seconds in the conference in your general speakers list. What do you do with them? Time can be used productively. And how do you use it productively? By something called yields. So suppose I am the delegate of XYZ country and I have given a 60-second speech. I have given a 60-second speech for all the delegates to showcase what my ideology and my position is on a particular agenda. I have 30 seconds remaining as per the time that is allocated to me. So, what do I do with that time? How do I use that time protectively? The first thing that you can do is something, the thing that you can essentially do, something called yields. There are three types of yields. Yields in this context essentially means I am going to use this remainder period of my time in X particular, Y particular, or Z particular way. There are three kinds of yields. The first one is which is called yield to a chair. What does yield to the chair means? Yield to the chair means I have finished my address for that 60 seconds and I have said I would like to yield the remainder of my time to my chairperson. My chairperson can then decide, because he or she is very experienced in MUN, I leave it up to the chairperson to decide what is best way for him or her to decide what I should do with the remainder of my time. The chairperson can choose what he or she thinks that the best remainder use of those 90 seconds, what you can essentially do with it. This is the first type of yield. The second type of yield is something called yield to comments. What does yield to comments essentially means? So suppose I've given a speech for about 60 seconds, 70 seconds, whatever the number is. And I am seeing the entire committee hear me, and I am seeing them react to the different words, stances, adjectives that I've been using. And I feel that, you know what, maybe because of what I have said, there may be somebody who must be wanting to contribute or reinforce to what I'm trying to explain or reinforce my stance. It can be my friend who wants to help me and push me in committee. It can even be my enemy who wants to pull me down and break my stance in committee. I can yield to something called comments. Yield to comments basically means what? Based on what I have said in that 60 or 70 seconds, the rest of the committee has the ability to make a comment on your speech, saying, hey, you know what? The delegate of India said ABC, XYZ things. I think it made a lot of sense to our country. It aligns a lot with the policies of our country. And I feel that as a delegate of so and so country, delegate of India saying the right thing and reinforce it with any other information or content that I would like to add to what I have said. Yield to comments essentially gives you an idea and lets your friends or enemies in the committee comment on what you have said. So you get a better understanding, because if you open dialogue rather than monologue, you get a better understanding what you have said and what someone else has understood can be two very different things. Yield to comments helps you clarify that, helps you understand what has been absorbed by the rest of the delegates in your committee based on your stance, your position, and your introductory speech. So, yield to comments is a really nice thing to do. Many a times, your chairperson will probably resort to this particular yield as such. Finally, we have the third type of yield, which is called yield to questions. Now, I again taking my own example. I have given my general speakers list speech. I have given a talk, 60, 70 seconds, whatever it is. And I see that some people look a little confused, saying that they might have not got the clarity that they needed from me in the committee based on what I've said, my stance, my position. They might have some clarification, some queries, some questions that they would like to ask me based on what I have said. They can't ask you any random thing. Based on what I have said in my speech, in my address, the rest of the committee has the ability to ask me questions. You have the power to allow the committee to ask you questions based on what you have said. This is the third kind of yield called yield to questions. So what happens out here essentially is I have given my speech. I see that, okay, hey, you know what? Delegate of Russia may have some questions to delegate of India. Delegate of the US might have questions. Delegate of China also must be having some questions. They look a little perplexed. They look a little confused. They look like they have some clarifications. So what I can do in the committee is I can say after my speech, I would like to yield the remainder of my time to questions. This will allow the rest of the delegates in your committee to ask you questions based on what you have said in the conference. So, suppose you have not been very clear in communicating to your committee and you have some time left and you'd like to make certain clarifications in your committee to maybe reinforce your stand, maybe to, convince someone who's neutral. At that junction time, you can resort to yield to questions. But remember one thing, if you yield to questions and there is another smart delegate in that committee who asks you a question off guard, you will yet be liable to you will yet be liable to address that question, because it is you who has given the power to the rest of the committee to ask questions. So coming back and summarizing these 2 points with you really quickly, general speakers list is how your committee flow begins. It begins with an introductory speech where all of us alphabetically, based on our countries or portfolios, we give an introductory address, introductory speech, which highlights our stance, our position, whether we're for, against, or neutral towards the agenda that is being discussed in our committee, in our classroom. Should we not use the complete 90 seconds that has been allocated to us for this general speakers list? You have the ability to make maximum efficient use of that time by yielding that time involves three options. One is yield to the chair, second is yield to comments, and third is yield to questions. You have the ability to choose any one of these yields. Should you find yourself confused or facing any difficulty, just hand over the time back to the chair and let the chairperson decide what is the best next course of action for your discussions and deliberations. This is essentially how your committee will begin during the conference. I hope we're clear on this. Next up, we have point number 15. Next up, we have point number 15, which is called moderated caucus. All right. I will be taking questions from all of you. All right. There is a third session. What I want you to do is, this is going to be a monologue. I'm sorry about that. We can crack some jokes in the chat box to make it lighter. But all your questions, what I want you to do is I want you to have them noted down. And after we complete the explanation of the entire procedure, the third session is going to be only a doubt solving session where I'm going to be addressing all the different questions and queries that you have. Right now, I just need you to keep your mind and your ears open and understand what I'm trying to explain to you. Many of your questions will probably get clarified through my explanations. Coming to the next point of the rules of procedure, it is something which is called moderated caucus. What is the broken tape recorder line that is always used during the conference by the chairperson at all times? Are there any points or motions on the floor? Are there any points or motions on the floor? Are there any points or motions on the floor? You have an example of a motion called motion to set an agenda. You also have another example of another motion which is called moderated caucus. Moderated caucus, I'll tell you what it means in a very simple language. We all have textbooks in school, right? Let's take our geography textbook as an example. In this geography textbook, there are multiple chapters, multiple modules. These different modules together comprise of your entire geography textbook. A moderated caucus is essentially discussing each chapter, each module individually, independently. This is what your moderated caucus means. It is a detailed discussion on a subtopic of the main agenda. Let me give you an example. Suppose we're discussing about development of rural communities here in India. You've heard of Andaman and Nicobar Islands? Do you know about the tribals out there? They really need a lot of different support from us as much as we need from them because they know their land so much better than all of us. So, when we're discussing development of rural communities, we will essentially discuss a particular subtopic, maybe a particular rural community, maybe a particular, maybe those African tribes, okay, can be an example of what we're discussing. Any detailed discussion on the subtopic of the agenda, if you would have read your research material, if you would have gone on the internet and read, you would have realized that, oh my God, there's so much of information about this topic, so many different points of view, so many different informations that are given all over. How do we start? Where do we begin? What do we discuss first? What you need to do in committee, what you need to do in committee is you need to essentially break down the agenda with the help of your chairperson into different sub agendas or subtopics, just like your textbook. You need to discuss each subtopic in detail, in explicit detail. This can only be done in something which is called a moderated caucus. So, how do you do this? When the chairperson says any points or motions on the floor, what do? You raise your placard in case you want to introduce it as a delegate in the committee. You raise your placard and say hi. Rather, when the chairperson recognizes you, say delegate of India or delegate of Australia or delegate of Bahrain. I would like to open a motion to open a moderated caucus to discuss development of rural communities in the African subcontinent for total time length 8 minutes and time per speaker 1 minute. This is what I am proposing as a delegate of, say, India in the committee. Now, just because I have proposed it, that does not make it compulsory for everybody to discuss what I have chosen, or rather, what you have chosen. So, what do? We go back to point number 5. We go to something called informal voting. So, if everybody thinks that, hey, you know what, Prashant or Aaron or Sukhdev or whoever has introduced and opted for this motion to open a moderated caucus, if it makes sense and it is worth discussing, as a committee, you all can informally vote for it. Your chairperson will say, all those in favor of voting for this agenda, please raise your placards. At that juncture, you will raise your placard and say, yes, I am going to be voting for this. The chairperson will gauge how many people are voting for it. Then he will ask or she will ask how many people who do not want to discuss the agenda. They will also raise their placards. Accordingly, based on majority of the committee, the moderated caucus will be actioned and implemented, or again it will be tabled and put aside. Coming to what a moderated caucus topic is, it is a detailed discussion. What is general speaker's list? Introductory address showcasing for, against, or neutral. What is moderated caucus? A detailed discussion on the subtopic of the main agenda is what is a moderated caucus. The agenda needs to be broken down into different subtopics, just like your textbooks, like your modules, and each topic needs to be discussed in detail. Anyone in the conference, in your committee, can opt to open a moderated caucus of their choice. However, the decision is a collective decision whether the rest of the committee finds value in that moderated caucus topic that you want to discuss in the committee. So it will be put to vote and essentially we will discuss that in detail. Now, if you observe, there is a time limit of maximum 10 minutes and time per speaker maximum 1 minute. In this case, what happens is in a moderated caucus, unlike general speakers list, you have to give your name to the chairperson. After voting for it, the chairperson will ask, if it is voted for, how many delegates would like to discuss or would like to contribute towards discussing this moderated caucus. Please raise your placards. Your chairperson will analyze those people who want to contribute to this. They will raise their placards and say, yes, I want to speak, I want to speak. They will make a list like the GSL, which is alphabetical. They'll make a list based on who wants to speak, and each person will be given time, maybe 30 seconds, maybe 1 minute, depending on what has been proposed in the committee. Another thing I want to tell you, that just because you may not want to discuss or contribute to this moderated caucus topic, is not necessarily compulsory that you have to vote against it. You can vote for it and hear the discussion as well. You can probably contribute to the discussion at a later stage. Another thing that I'd like to share with you is that the person, here's the biggest advantage for the experienced MUN has used this. For the delegate who raises this motion of moderated caucus and that motion gets voted for, that delegate has an option to choose whether he or she would like to speak first or last in the moderated caucus. It is the option of the delegate who has proposed the moderated caucus topic. So, a smart delegate, what would they do? They would speak last in the moderated caucus, not first. Generally, what we get very excited, no, 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 I want to speak, I want to speak, I want to speak. It's the opposite. You will always try to opt for being last. I'll tell you the reason behind this. Because you have a time limit of maximum 1 minute. Maybe you have a lot of information you want to share. That may be the reason why you're proposing this as well. So, if there are other 9 people, 8 people, 6 people speaking before you, at that juncture in time, they might also cover certain points that's on your mind, right? They might also cover certain points in their allocated time period which you were considering covering during your address in the mod cock as well. So what will you do at this junction time? You will always opt to speak last, not first. Why? Because you will get a pulse of what the rest of the committee is thinking before you have the final say on that subtopic in committee. So you need to be smart, you need to be on this thing. And if you are going to be the one who's taking initiative to raise a moderated caucus, you also have the ability to choose whether you would like to speak first or last in the moderated caucus as well. So this is what your moderated caucus essentially means. Again, summarizing what I had to say, your agenda, visualize it, is broken down into multiple sub-agendas, just like your textbook. Each sub-agenda or each module is discussed in detail. This is done through something called a motion called a moderated caucus. It has a total time length of maximum 10 minutes and time per speaker maximum 1 minute. It can also be extended based on the chairperson if many people want to contribute it, or it can be re-voted upon and tabled on the conference at large. This is what your moderated caucus essentially means. Next up, we have something which is called unmoderated caucus, which is essentially an informal discussion. Okay, I want you to create a table: moderated caucus, in moderated caucus, unmoderated caucus. Sorry, tongue of slip of tongue. Moderated caucus is a formal discussion on a particular subtopic of the main topic. Unmoderated caucus is an informal discussion that takes place usually after maybe one or two moderated caucus topics. All right. This is a time where you will lobby, you will be diplomatic, you can get up from where you're sitting, sit with your friends. And when I say friends, I mean your ally countries, not your friends from school or the friends you made out there. Sit with the people who share the same ideology and start discussing, deliberating, and even use it to find solutions. You can also use this time. You can also use this time to convince the students or delegates rather who are neutral on this topic. Because remember, at the end of the day, it all boils down to one thing, and that is votes. So essentially, what you can do in an unmoderated caucus is a number of things. It is first and foremost an informal session where essentially you can get up and engage with everybody in the committee. It is also a space where you can write solutions such as your working paper, resolutions, and even your declarations should there be a crisis in your committee. And essentially, it enables you to network and be diplomatic with other people. Like, say for example, I am India and somebody else is USA. So suppose I want USA to work with me and I want to work with India. This is my time where I can go to the delegate of USA, or the delegate of USA can come to me and actually share with me what they would like to do in the committee and how we can work together. Because end of the day, if anything needs to be happen down in the committee, it all boils down to the votes. So you cannot be thinking only about your own country's vested interests, but you must also take into consideration the larger picture of all the other countries involved and their requirements from the committee and what their stance and ideologies, and try to find that space where everybody is a winner in the committee. This is what you can do in an unmoderated caucus. Like, I can literally, as a delegate of India, go to the delegate of Pakistan and say, hey, you know what, let's come to a consensus on the Kashmir issue, which will generally never happen in the real world. But hey, what if us go above and beyond and actually talk about this entire issue in the IPSS summit and actually open up a floor of an informal discussion, me and the delegate of Pakistan. So unmoderated caucus is an informal discussion, unlike a moderated caucus. In this unmoderated caucus, what essentially happens is you can lobby. Lobby basically means trying to get people on your team, trying to get people on your block, trying to get people to work with you, all right, trying to get people to vote for you. It also is a time where you can write solutions such as working papers, resolutions apart from others. I will explain to you again as we progress what these working papers and what these resolutions are and how you can go about trying to get them resolved and get them drafted as well. But what is an unmoderated caucus? It is another sort of motion like moderated caucus. Here, essentially, what happens, it generally follows a moderated or two moderated caucus is generally followed up by an unmoderated caucus, where after we all share our thoughts on that intense subtopic we've discussed, we try to discuss, negotiate, be diplomatic with each other, and try to collectively consensually find a resolution to what we have essentially discussed in the conference at large. Sorry about that. So this is essentially what it means in the this is essentially what it means in the unmoderated caucus as at large. So how do you pass an unmoderated caucus? Just like any other motion, it is going to be put to vote. What you see in italics written out here, motion to open an unmoderated caucus for what your purpose is. I want to write a working paper. I want to lobby and negotiate. I want to do what, depending on what you'd like to do. And you have to mention a time duration, maximum 10 plus 5 minutes if it is required, if you're writing a solution. And essentially, you talk about this, you raise it as a motion, raise your placard. When the chairperson says any points or motions on the floor, raise your placard. It is put to informal vote in the conference. It is put to an informal vote. And essentially, if the rest of the committee agrees with me, saying just like a moderated caucus, I think we should find a solution to this subtopic or be diplomatic about something, then at that juncture in time, it will be put to vote. If majority people vote for the unmoderated caucus, just like the moderated caucus, the unmoderated caucus will be action and we will be in motion for point number 16, that is known as unmoderated caucus. So this is where we're going to stop for today. I'm going to quickly summarize the entire thing for you like a crash course. Point number one, delegate representation basically means we're representing one country, one portfolio, one vote. We're all on the level playing field. Point number two, communication language. We are an open-ended platform, an open-ended institution, an open-ended conference. So we would be recognizing both English as well as our mother tongue Tamil at this conference. Electronic devices, please bring them with you for research, analysis, and intellectual purposes. You have your socials and other times when you can use it recreationally, but try to make sure that you use it during the committee sessions and make the best use of it. Decorum, very important. Remember, you may be 16, but you're representing a country. MUN is a simulation of the UN. We must respect its importance in the world, which may or may not be debatable, but you must be at your best behavior at the conference. Informal voting is a simple majority, because everything that we want to do cannot be our single decision. It has to be a collective decision. As a committee, majority wins in informal voting. Executive board, they are your class teachers, they are mentors, they are your guides, they are your judges, they're young, they're like you, they're experienced MUNers, they're friendly, they're approachable, and they're there to manage your committee. Appeal, any problem that I'm facing in the committee, I raise my placard, I say permission to appeal the chairperson calls me, I share my concern, he or she will look into it and try to solve it. Censure, any person who's creating a problem, even if it is an executive board member, we can censure or remove that delegate from the committee for a session or from the conference at large. Only thing is, it requires 2/3 majority and requires final approval from the faculty of the Heartfulness International School. Secretary General is the apex body of the conference, just like how you have your principal. They are the decision makers, final authoritative bodies of authority of the conference, along with our school principal. Debate rules, attendance, much like class, we raise our placard, we make the statement present and voting because we want to exercise our powers of voting in the conference. Setting an agenda is how we begin committee by another motion to set the agenda and mention the agenda of your conference. General speakers list, introductory speech showcasing for, against, or neutral towards the conference. Any time left, use that time productively. Give it to the chair if you feel the chair makes the best choice. Give it to comments in case you feel that you want to hear what other people want to understand based on what you said. Give it to questions in case you want to answer some questions, or you feel that you want to justify a few more things that the delegates might want to ask you in conference. Moderated caucus is a detailed discussion on your subtopic for a specific time period and a specific time per speaker. It can be proposed by anyone but needs to be voted informally. Then the session gets activated. Unmoderated caucus, informal discussion, usually followed by one or two moderated caucus. This is the time when we discuss, we negotiate, we be diplomatic, we lobby, we write solutions, and we try to get as many people on our team as possible. This is another type of motions. So with these 16 points, we will conclude today's session. I know there are some of you who have questions. There is a dedicated session on the 7th, the third session, only to questions. So I want you to keep your questions noted down, and then I will be explaining to you and giving you answers to all your questions on that one session, where we won't have this document open. We'll just have the chat box and your questions and my answers. That being said, welcome to all of you to Hearts MUN 2024, slated to be Chennai's largest MUN conference of this season, and most importantly, a very special intellectual event for all of you. See you all tomorrow, same place, same time, but different link. It's on your mail or with your teachers. 5:30 p.m. tomorrow is when we continue with our next session of the Hearts MUN training, rules of procedure training schedule. Thank you all. God bless you, and see you on the other side. Bye.